Hi, BCC class. I know it's been a really hard semester for all of us, and for some of us even more so. And if you've been suffering during this time or had friends or family who have been sick, I hope that you are well and that you're doing okay. And it's an unprecedented time. I'm sure we'll remember it when we talk to our kids and grandkids in the future. But today I want to talk about our final exam, which is tomorrow. And I'm going to upload it on Blackboard at 2 o'clock or a little bit before 2. So you should be ready. Make sure you have your sources. You're going to use the two sources that I sent you on Blackboard. One is Michael Pollan and the other one is Anna Lappé. So in this first video, I'm going to talk about Anna Lappé. And since it's a long article, it might take 2 videos for me to get through it. What you're going to do is you're basically going to write an essay. You're going to write an essay using both of those sources. And I will give you the prompt tomorrow. You won't have the prompt in advance because I want you to write it on the spot. Now, because you're writing under pressure, it's like a rough draft. I realize that that's difficult to do, so don't have anxiety about that. It's fine. I know that you're writing it in a short amount of time, so I don't expect it to be perfect. But I want you to have something interesting to say, and I want you to make sure that you answer the prompt. So you're going to use MLA format. You don't have to have citations at the end, but I'd like you to have some quotes in the essay from each source, maybe like 1 or 2 from each source. And you should write a few pages. So and you should touch on the main points that relate to the argument you're making. So obviously it's going to be about climate change, and it's going to be about the choices we make, especially the food choices we make. So let's start with Anna Lappé. So the climate crisis at the end of our fork is written by Lappé, and you should read her bio here because it's interesting. She is an expert in the field. She is a best-selling author, public speaker, founder, along with her mother, of the Small Planet Institute, an international network of scholars, activists, and educators interested in intersections of hunger and poverty. So, right away, that she is an expert in the field, or at least she speaks with experts, and she has become an expert in the idea that climate change, hunger, poverty, and our food choices are all interrelated. In this particular piece, she starts out by addressing the audience at a convention. She says when she went to a New York State Farmers Convention, she was listening to this NASA scientist. Her name is Cynthia Rosenzweig, and she's one of the world's leading experts on climate change. And what Rosenzweig told them was that what we are seeing are major impacts of climate change on agriculture. We see droughts leading to crop loss and salinization of soils, flooding caused by waterlogged soils, longer growing seasons leading to new and more pests, and erratic weather shifting harvesting seasons. And this is coming from a NASA scientist who is one of the world's leading experts on climate change. And she says that by 2080, our world will be a very different place if we proceed at this rate. And think about it, in our own experience, we have had many more national and weather the weather. Sorry, this is my dog Nikki. So she's going to interrupt us, but she barks at everyone going by. So basically what the climate scientists are saying, Nikki, stop, is that we see the results of climate change through the weather patterns that we're seeing. We have hotter summers and colder winters. We have, more droughts. We have fires. Think of the fires on the West Coast. Um, we have floods in the South, and we have weather patterns that we haven't seen before. We have hurricanes that have come all the way up the Atlantic coast. Uh, so that's how she begins her essay. And then she goes on to say something which I think is very persuasive. She says, the global system for producing and distributing food accounts for roughly 1/3 of human-caused global warming effects. According to the United Nations seminal report, Livestock's Long Shadow, the livestock sector alone, that's the raising of animals and the feed that we raise to feed them, is responsible for 18% of the world's total global warming effect, more than the emissions produced by every plane, train, and steamer ship on the planet. And, like in the margin, I said, wow, because though that statistic is something I have never heard of before. And I think the shocking element of her essay is that she makes a very strong presentation in that our food system, and she breaks it up into these 4 categories: land use, agriculture, waste and transportation, and the organic solution. So if you discuss her article, as you will in your essay tomorrow, you should probably touch on all those 4 aspects, or at least several of them, especially the solution that she offers. So she goes on to discuss why our treatment and our use of livestock and the food choices we make affect climate change. And again, usually when we think of climate change, like some of you I'm sure have thought of, is we think of changing a light bulb using LED lights, or I don't know, driving a fuel efficient car, driving less, taking public transportation. What other ways can we save? Using less petroleum products. Making sure that making sure we're globally responsible. Unfortunately, there've been a lot of cutbacks in environmental programs and in environmental rules in the current administration. So there's been like rollbacks of like 90 or 100 different environmental laws, like dumping in rivers and the like. But I think what's interesting about Anna Lappé is that she makes such a strong argument about just one tiny sector. I mean, it's not so tiny because you see from the article how broad it really is. But just in maybe shifting our food choices, how much of an impact we can make on the world and on the environment. Okay, so in her first section, and again, I might have to make this several videos so that I can upload them more quickly. I don't want this to get too long. So the first one is the land use connection. And again, she talks about 18% of the world's global warming effect is associated with land use changes, mostly from our food system. So that means that rainforests are being destroyed because of the food industry. We have factory farms. And in this, this is just a one section from a larger book, and I'm sure in this book she gets into the abuse of animals. So in this particular article, she really doesn't talk about that, but that is something that you could mention if it's relevant to your exam prompt tomorrow. And again, she doesn't really even touch on that, but it's definitely below the surface that not only do we use the land and abuse the land, we also abuse living things. And unfortunately, relevant to what's going on today with COVID-19, it's related to the you know, dehumanizing animals and eating animals, really in a incorrect way. And if you think of all the plagues that have ever existed, I think most of them come from from animals. This most recent one from bats in Wuhan. So that's something that is relevant, to the food we eat. The food we eat not only destroying our ecosystem, but destroying us in physically. You know. So that's just an aside. So the land use connection is pretty straightforward. And she does talk about palm oil. And if you don't know about palm oil, it's the cheapest oil that's used in mostly in Twinkies and in your processed foods. So in an ideal world, we wouldn't eat any processed foods, and we go back to farming and eating whole foods like we did centuries ago, because it's not rocket science. I think that obviously the food we eat affects us mentally and physically and in every way, and it affects clearly the world at large. According to Anna Lappé. So think about the fact that these palm oil plantations that are run by these huge conglomerates that just their sole purpose is to make money. That's very relevant here. And the thing is, when they level these rainforests, you not only kill species of animals that may never exist again, you also are changing you're devastating the environment. And when you take the trees down, you destroy not only the environment today, but you destroy it forever. And the problem is that they take away the trees and they build these palm oil plantations really just for profit. And you're also taking away land that can be used for other purposes, for local farms, and to feed people in China and Indonesia and India, where these palm oil plantations exist. So you have communities there and on the other side of the world that are very poor and could use the land for their purposes to raise food, but yet we insist on feeding ourselves to at the expense of others. All right, I'm going to stop the video here, and then when I start it up again, we're going to talk about agriculture. All right, take care. Bye.